under any circumstances, that would be unacceptable, regardless of whether we're dealing here with the Deputy Prime Minister, duly elected of a country.
All right, Judge, well, just a few individuals involved in this. You can't tar the entire protest with that sort of behaviour or those comments, can you?
Well, the reality was yesterday, in fact, was about celebrating the achievement of a considerable number of people from the West Tala area who were celebrating securing educational qualifications. Sure, and unfortunately, because of the conduct of some and the way in which the protest was conducted by some yesterday, including Deputy Murphy, then I think that has tarnished their day, and that's quite unfortunate. And
we know that, but my question was it not a minority who were involved in that behaviour?
I don't know.
Paul Murphy has conceded that.
I think, to be perfectly frank, I mean, the pictures that people have seen beamed into their homes last night were truly shocking, disgusting and appalling. I think the vast majority of people across this country, even those who were out protesting 2 weeks ago, I don't believe that the level of protest yesterday, the way it was conducted, reflects their views and would attract their support.
What should Paul Murphy have done that he didn't do, in your view?
Well, I think there's an obligation on everybody to who is involved in organising demonstrations of this nature to exercise some control. I have no difficulty with people taking to the streets to exercise their legitimate democratic right to protest, but those who take them onto the streets also have a leadership role in taking them off the streets and making sure that protests are conducted in an orderly fashion. Now, when we talk about stewards, there's one police force in this country, in Garda Síochána, and the rule of law must be respected and upheld by everybody. And it seems to me that yesterday that was not the case.
Can we move to the substantive issue here of the charges? And we're getting a number of leaks in various newspapers over the last number of days. What can you confirm, Judge Nash, in relation to these reports that a single-person household will pay in and around €100 and a multiple-person household, whatever that is, will pay less than 200?
Well, I think what this demonstrates, as well as the tarnished I said earlier on, indeed in the Marion Finucane programme, she effectively confirmed that that's a reasonably accurate depiction of the type of package that we expect will be unveiled by the Minister for the Environment on Wednesday. There are a number of meetings yet to have within government about that particular package, but the key point here is that we need to make sure that we've got a package of direct water charges that's affordable and modest, and that commands the broad support of the majority of people.
And who
will understand why there will be a
we don't want to go back over all of that stuff again.
That we have a safe, adequate
can we
water supply.
Can we get down to the substance of the charges, or what we believe to be the substance of the charges? And these would be introduced on the basis of a flat fee for a period of 3 years at a minimum.
Well, as you understand it, that's the direction in which this package is going. As I did say, I mean, there's some work yet to do before the package is signed off, but I think that's a reasonably accurate depiction of what people can expect to see. But it's important as well to note, Richard, that we will have a full debate in the Oireachtas, where these debates should happen this week.
And where it didn't happen previously.
I mean, you know, there was the way in which this issue was approached initially was wholly inadequate. I think there was an acknowledgement that is the case, but we
and Labour were a party to that, weren't you?
We have listened.
You rushed it through the Dáil and didn't allow the democratic process to take place. Isn't that true?
Well, I think the Taoiseach herself said that when you were setting up a public utility of the magnitude of Irish water, of the significance of Irish water, that it was important that time was taken to properly tease out the issues involved.
And why didn't you?
That time should have been taken.
But why wasn't it?
But that time should have been taken.
Well, why wasn't
it? There's very little point, I think, in.
But why wasn't it, Minister? Why wasn't it taken?
I think there was an unnecessary rush to make sure that Irish water was established. More time should have been taken. We now have reviewed the situation and will present a package to the Dáil this week where it will be properly debated and properly analysed, and that's correctly what should happen.
Do the numbers add up? If it's around 100 for a single person household and around 200 or less for a multiple person household, does that all add up to what it is that you need to get you past the Eurostat definition of what is off balance sheet?
I think it's important for our economic prospects that Irish water is off balance sheet, and I would be quite confident.
We know that. That's why I'm asking you the question. Will you get the same? Will you get the amount of money that you need? Because the government can't put more money in without being in breach of the Eurostat rules. And have the numbers been done on that?
As I understand it, they would have to be. And I think the Department of Finance and the Department of Environment and Irish Water as a body would have to be convinced that that's the case. That market test wouldn't come for quite a number of months, but it's not an academic point that we keep Irish water off balance sheet, because it's important that it doesn't affect our deficit targets, because what we want to make sure we do is make sure that the economic recovery that we are experiencing manages to find its way down to people's pockets, and the best way to do that is to make sure that we are moving in the direction that we're moving in at the moment to make sure that we can invest in public services and ensure that working people get money back into their own pockets.
Minister, what about the people who don't sign up, the ones who don't register, who refuse to register, the people who say, and we'll hear from Paul Murphy on this issue in a minute, that say we can't afford anything or we don't want to pay anything? What will happen to those who don't register? What's the stick?
That's something that the government has to consider, and I think Minister Kelly was quite right when he made a statement last week to make it clear to people that people would not have water pressure reduced, people would not have their water service taken from them if they were not in a position to pay. In the normal course of events where a bill is owed to a public utility, there are a range of different options open to the ESB, blaggards, or whatever the case might be. And I would imagine
to pursue them through the courts.
Well, I would imagine that ultimately Irish Water, as the public utility responsible for collecting water charges, would take all the steps that are open to ESB.
Right, but what we're not hearing, and what the question was being asked of John Burton during the week, in which he couldn't answer, was, will the state be taking the money from people's welfare or their wages or whatever?
Well, as I said, there are a number of things that the government has to clarify at this stage. The package has not been concluded, but when we
would you find that system of getting the money, would you find that acceptable?
It's not a case of whether I find it acceptable or not.
It is, of course. You're a minister.
I think very clearly where there is these are legal charges instituted by the Oireachtas. We will have a new package of measures that will be designed to make sure, insofar as we all possibly can, that they are broadly affordable and they are modest. And that's the
all right. But if somebody decides that they will not pay, can't pay, will not pay, they don't register, they refuse to register, but as you say, you won't cut them off or reduce them to a trickle. Will the state reach in and take that money from their welfare payment or from their wages?
I'm not aware, quite frankly, Richard, of what the proposals are at the moment in terms of...
All right, but would you be in favour of that?
In the normal course of events, these are the type of things... we see what happened, for example, with the local property tax or revenue or given responsibility. This is not a tax, it's a charge actually for a public utility. And the same options that are open to ESB, blaggards and other public utilities where people get a service would be open to Irish Water as well. And that's a matter for Irish Water to decide with government. All of those measures have not been finally concluded yet, and it really would be premature of me to say anything about that at this stage.
Paul Murphy, what effect do you think, if these charges are true, and we're now hearing there's a pretty good chance that what we're hearing over the last number of days is more or less accurate, what effect will this have on your protest? You're determined to continue on to the bitter end, are you?
Yes, until these charges are scrapped. I don't think they'll stop the protest movement with what's coming out at the moment, because I think people will rightly understand that fine, they might be at a frozen at a level that some people will be able to afford for a period of 2 or 3 years. But then afterwards, what will happen? We'll go to meter charges, which is based on the best Department of Environment estimates of usage and based on the CEO's figures in terms of the price per 1,000 litres, which will mean for a 2-adult family close to €400, for a 4-adult family over €900. So people aren't stupid. They know this is the starting point. They know if they come in at any level, then they're going to rise. And I think it'll give people confidence again, like all the previous concessions have. I mean, since the first big protest and the by-election, the government's been on the back foot. They've been announcing this concession, that concession, but it hasn't stopped the protest. The protests have actually grown because people feel their own power that they can win on this issue.
But if the government, and there's a real chance, isn't there, that a lot of people who have supported your campaign or their campaign, whichever aspect of it they've been following, that this will effectively split the opposition. People will peel off and say, well, it's not that bad, I might as well pay.
I don't think that will happen. I certainly think that's the government's strategy, is to try to divide and rule people, and that's part of what all this sinister fringe talk about the protests is about, and it's part of what the carrot and stick approach of the government. But I think you have quite a new political situation now where people are mobilised in very significant historic numbers. People feel their own power, and it looks like the government's not going to go for deduction at source. And I know why they're not, because I think if they did, the government would fall because of the level of protest it could bring down the government. But that means that the option of non-payment is very much on, and a massive boycott, organised way, can be built and can defeat these charges.
And if people, people obviously will be using their water, and as Jed Nash would say, that would entitle Irish Water to pursue them in the normal means as the gas board or the electricity board would then. What might that do for the resolve of people not to pay and not cooperate with the system?
But before they would get any money off anybody through a process of pursuing a simple contract out through the courts, they'd have to take people to court at least twice. That would take quite a significant period of time. How many people can they bring to court? If we can achieve 45%, 40%, but They might, but it'll be a long time. But the main point is, by the time they get around to that, they're on the very doorstep of a general election. The Labour Party knows that the water charges has the potential to add to what damage has already been done and wipe them out. Fine Gael is also experiencing it. So I think that's not a very strong sanction, and people can feel confident that if numbers hold together, if we maintain a very strong non-payment, then the government won't be able to seriously attack that.
There's been a report in today's Sunday Times that the We Won't Pay campaign is looking for a €5 membership fee or contribution. Is that true?
It's a €3 membership fee.
And if they don't pay the €3, you won't give them a placard. Is that true?
They get a placard, they won't get a membership card. I mean, the idea is we're building...
You're not charging people for the right to protest?
No, not for the right to protest, but to join an organised campaign. I mean, I presume Jed pays to join the Labour Party. So the We Won't Pay campaign is built on the principle of organised massive non-payment.
And if people refuse to pay, Paul, what will you do? What's your sanction?
There's no problem. They're free to come to the meetings, free to participate, free to join. It costs money to print leaflets, to print posters, etc. And so it's a way of getting people to be able to contribute and building a massive people's movement.
All right. Paul Murphy, thank you very much.